Started King of Pops that year and a single push cart. My brother joined me a couple months later and kind of haven't looked back since.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Hustle Up podcast. My name is Clint.
Jonathan. Matt.
And today we are sitting down with co-founder of King of Pops, Mr. Stephen Carse.
Hello, hello.
Hey, thanks for being here.
No doubt.
So for those who don't know about King of Pops, or maybe they're getting introduced for the first time, what are you guys? What do you do? What's your backstory?
Whew. All right. Well, this could be the whole podcast, but the closest to an elevator pitch we've got in 2009, a lot of stuff was going on in the economy. I was working in an insurance company and had got laid off. I've got my oldest brother's an anthropologist, and he was in Latin America learning, writing a book, and the paleta, which is the Spanish word for popsicle, for some reason became the focus of all our trips. It's basically a popsicle, but without kind of the artificial flavorings and corn syrups. Instead, interesting flavors and all natural ingredients. Decided insurance, if insurance isn't a sure thing, perhaps there are no sure things when it comes to work, and decided to try to take things into my own hands. Started King of Pops that year and a single push cart. My brother joined me a couple months later and kind of haven't looked back since. So started as a popsicle company, kind of on the corner. Since then, we've started a distribution company. We distribute about 700 stores throughout the South. That's called Perfect 10 Foods. We've got a farm called King of Crops. We've got a Christmas tree delivery business called Tree Elves. We've got a compost business called King of Compost. And we're just looking to vertically integrate and do cool things, I guess. Have fun with it.
That's super cool. Yeah, vertical integration and finding those synchronicities is awesome. Yeah. When you were first taking that leap from, when you kind of realized that nothing in life is certain and you got to create it, and we're taking that leap from insurance to that first push cart, what were some of the steps that you took? Like, how did you make the first popsicles? How did you come up with those flavors? How did you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so for me, I was lucky because I didn't, a lot of people kind of have to take the leap, and that takes kind of more guts. I was more pushed. I had this idea, and I was pushed by circumstance to start. Those very first few things, I think, come down to a lot. I mean, kind of a lot of mind block / excuses. Like nothing is really that complicated when you go back and look at it, but when you're in it, it seems impossibly complicated. So if you've never signed up for a street vending permit and it's your first time, every single one of the lines on that form is a question mark that you don't really understand. Once you've done 50 of them, it's almost, it's you can do it with your eyes closed.
You got a recipe.
Yeah, all the things that are the red tape or whatever are certainly intimidating. I mean, making the product certainly seems like a big deal for us. I don't know how to say it. It was just like, it was simple. We wanted to use really good ingredients and combine them together. And if you start with good stuff, it's usually going to turn into good stuff.
So are you whipping them up in your kitchen or how?
Yeah.
I read online that you come up with 100 ideas a week.
Yeah, that needs to get offline. But a lot of ideas, too many ideas. So the way that, I don't know if you guys have read the book Traction.
By who?
Gino Wickman.
Okay.
It's a book. I think it's like entrepreneurial operating system is what they talk about. But a lot of times when you're setting up a business, you could do things a million different ways, and it just becomes daunting. So I found it really helpful to kind of set some of the groundwork of, hey, let's do meetings how they suggest. Let's do our org chart how they suggest. And one of the things that's really interesting is you've got like, the way they set it up is you've got a visionary and an integrator. And the visionary is trying to think down the road, and the integrator is trying to think, how can we make these things happen kind of day to day? So with the ideas, it's kind of my job. One of my job titles, which I actually just went down to one a couple weeks ago, is visionary. And so my job is to kind of come up with these ideas. And then my brother's job is to also come up with ideas, but more often than not, either shape them into something that can be executed or politely say, nah.
Yeah. No, that's important though, and being able. I was watching one of your interviews too, and it was talking about how you had come back from a conference with some idea to make some currency,
Yeah.
and you came back and you loved that idea, and you talked it over with one of your partners, and you said their eyes kind of glazed over, and we're like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But like, how do you put A and B together in a cohesive way to come up with these ideas? Like, are you just always aware and just always looking? How can I integrate King of Pops into this kind of subculture, this kind of brand?
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it. I think it's a blessing and a curse to walk into any environment that you walk into and think about what could my involvement be in this. And it's not a like me thing. Like what could I do to help? What could work? What could be cool? So walking into any restaurant, walking into any store, constantly kind of thinking about service. What are they doing well? When you're on every website, I mean, it is really fun, but certainly when you're with like your significant other or your friends or family, a lot of my family is involved in my work, so that's fun, but it can certainly become all encompassing.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but that's where the ideas come from. If you're always thinking about it, you're going to have ideas.
Yeah, make it a lifestyle, not a job. And
Yeah.
So is lemon basil still your favorite popsicle?
I don't even know. My favorite, so we rolled out soft serve this year. And so this is our 10 year, in April we'll be 10 years old, which is pretty exciting for us. But, we started doing soft serve ice cream. And so I haven't been like overeating pops for a couple years now. Cause it's like after 10 years, you're kind of just like, yeah, I'll eat one. They're good. And I mean, every Friday we've got tasting menu. But the soft serve, I'm definitely just, whenever I'm over at Wonder Kid, which is the name of the diner where we're rolling it out. We open with our friends. I'm having it every single time, which isn't good.
So
But
you got. Go ahead.
I want to figure out how these ideas, like lemon basil, or like you guys have some very wild flavors. Yeah. How do those get paired up? Are you going to tasting events and pairing different things and say, hey, this could work?
In the beginning, it's just messing around with stuff. So the threshold for making a batch of a popsicle is usually about like $20 or $30.
Yep.
So it's pretty low, like to experiment and mess around with stuff. So that's how it started. I mean, we started out at farmers markets, and whether it was at the beginning or the end of the farmers market, the farmers would be coming up to us and with usually leftovers and, hey, do you want to buy this? So you get home, you've got some basil, you've got some strawberries, you've got some blueberries, and you just start combining stuff. And that's like the origin. And then once you get to scale, that doesn't work anymore. And you have to be a bit more kind of planned what actually could work. So I think there's advantages to both, like things that are happening to you and then things that you're creating. I think no matter what type of work you're in, you have the opportunity to do that.
So at least in the beginning, you guys are actually experimenting in the kitchen, just pairing things together to see what tastes good. Mm-hmm. What was the worst flavor you guys ever came up with?
It's a common question. And I've got my standard answer. I'd like to try to come up with something different, but we made a fig goat cheese that didn't translate very well. It tasted kind of like an entire meal on a stick. So that was pretty gross.
I feel like you'll have a cherry goat cheese. Don't you have a cherry goat cheese?
We may have. I mean, it literally, like I was saying, it's just like the threshold to make a flavor is just, it's just so simple. That we've made, I mean, I'm not trying, I don't know all the flavors.
It reminds me of when I'm a kid and my mom barely had any food in the fridge, and it was like, what can I take to throw in a blender?
Yeah. We did that with smoothies for sure. I mean, I think that was growing up was, whatever's around, what can we try to make taste a little bit better?
Just dump sugar in there.
Didn't you guys just buy your own farm to start doing your own ingredients and everything too?
Yeah, so we bought a farm out in Douglasville about 5 years ago. Just farm, man. If like, so the exciting part about the business that we've been in, and I think a lot of businesses, if you have a bad break or something's going on, or you have a bad experience, like you tweak it, you fix it, maybe the next day it looks a little bit better. But farming, man, that's a different beast, because like if you want to change something on a farm, like you don't begin to see what you did for a year, and then you don't know if you made a wrong decision oftentimes for like 2, 3, 4 years. So
Wow.
it's really starting to turn into something special out there. Like we harvested about 3,000 pounds of blackberries last year. But to put that in perspective, we probably used 20,000 pounds. So it's a chunk, but it's not enough. But we really want to highlight the stuff we're getting out there because it's super good quality. We also have like long term, and we just talk about like, you guys all know this. You just have too many ideas. But long term, we want to have like events and more like corporate retreat and like if you wanted to stay at the farm. So we kicked that off last year. We've got a tiny house out there just to like see what people's general experience is, and that's been a lot of fun to kind of be I'm kind of usually the guinea pig of things. So I'm running the Airbnb, and it's fun to hear people like good and bad and see what they like about being out there. But it's a cool place for sure.
So better ingredients, better pops.
Yeah. We talk about systems-dependent businesses rather than people-dependent businesses. And it sounds like, how many businesses are you involved with? I think I counted 6 or 7.
Yeah, they're all. So we have a whole, like we call it the Rainbow Umbrella, but we've got a holding company, and I mean all the different cities that we're in. So we're in 7 cities in the South. We have those all set up as different businesses. We have our production company set up as a different business, which, I mean, we can get into the S Corp versus C Corp versus LLC conversation for sure, but it's just depending on what you consider a different business. Like one is like mind focus different, and one is like legally different. But yeah, we've got a lot going on.
My question for that is, especially when you're getting started, you reach a point that, hey, this is more than we can handle. You're a visionary. Your brother is an implementer and executor. He helps bring the plan to fruition.
Yep.
You had to hire an operational or an ops systems person at some point to help so that you can keep starting new things.
Yeah.
Correct? Who is that person or that role, and at what point did you need them?
So I think it's easy for us. I mean, we're different than a lot, I think, of maybe like what the world puts out there of how things start. So 10 years, I'm 36, so I was 25, 26 when I was starting, and it's just been a slow burn, consistent growth. So the first year, Nick and I were the only employees, made everything either at night or in the morning, went out and sold, packaged, Next year we hired 2 people, and that was more like on the cart, like you can only be so many places. We're kind of lucky. Nick and I, we're both tall-ish white guys with blonde hair. Nick has very long hair, and I'm losing my hair, but like back then people couldn't really tell us apart. So they just thought like I was everywhere.
How are these guys everywhere at once?
So it was pretty cool. That was a big advantage. And I basically was working at one single cart spot, and I worked that spot basically 5 to 7 days a week for 3 years. I didn't leave there.
Wow.
And
Where was that spot?
North Avenue and North Highland.
Okay.
Virginia Highlands, or Ponce Islands, I guess. And and then Nick during that time was doing all the catering events or one-off festivals and stuff, but it was really important for me to build like a core audience, and simultaneously, like, I mean, you just do this type of stuff, but Monday I wanted to be there in case people showed up, but that's like when I was doing emails or whatever type of business stuff, but I was just sitting on my push cart in case someone walked up. I could still sell them a pop. So year 3, I mean, we just kind of slowly added people, and I think we've very much always hired from within, sometimes to a fault. But we've just kind of developed together a lot. And now we definitely have, very clear operations people. We still struggle with kind of knowing where to pass things off to a lot of times. So this is our off season, as you might imagine. It's February right now, and there's not that much pop action going on, unfortunately. But we're doing a lot of planning, and every year it's just like refining those plans and those processes, and then just communicating it back to each other dozens and dozens of times, because it seems like you've said something enough In your head, it's always super clear, but to your staff, like, especially once you get more than like a group of 5 or 6 or 7 people, it's just like you got to always just be repeating the same thing over and over because people aren't looking to listen.
Yeah, and they're not in your echo chamber.
Yeah.
You're exposed to all this information all the time, but that's
Yep.
your reality. And then how do you disseminate that to your employees and then to your customers?
But are you instilling that as part of your company culture? Like, is that bleeding into who King of Pops is?
Which part?
What you're saying over and over, like the things that you're repeating.
Oh yeah.
Kind of
Well-
your values.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I was thinking about then that I need to be, the values don't need to be repeated. I think people see that. I mean, they do, and you should make time for them. But what I'm talking about is much more boring of like, if you get we get a ton of requests for like silent auctions. And it's just like, no one wants to be the person that makes this silent auction happen. We're all fine with doing like a $50 donation, but there's a certain amount of administrative work that has to happen to like make that happen. So it's like a rotating email. We'll just send it in a circle to people of like, hey, here's this, take care of it. Hey, here's this, take care of it. And then it'll come back to me again and I'll be like, oh my gosh. So a lot of what I'm saying for communication is like just landing on who's doing something. It's as simple as that. And then like, we often just leave things vague that we don't want to handle because we don't either want to feel bad about making that someone's accountability or we just don't think about it. But what that creates just a lot more headaches and a lot more kind of bad feelings over time if you don't. Like cleaning the bathrooms is a perfect example. Like no one wants to be the one to say like, all right, part of your job is going to be to clean the bathrooms.
Yeah, you don't want to be the person hearing that either.
Yeah. And then as leaders, oftentimes we do this thing where we're like, well, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to show that if I can do this, other people will just naturally kind of like pick things up. And I think there's certainly something to be said with getting sweaty and working next to your team, but it's never ending. So that's been part of my progression is just. And also valuing different work, like just because it's something that you don't enjoy. I mean, bathrooms is probably one that's almost universal. But just because you don't like some piece of work doesn't mean that other people won't. And if you come at it with the attitude that they're not going to like it, then it's almost disrespecting them a little bit. If
Frame everything in an optimistic light. Yeah. When was there, in terms of scale, was it a compounding little steps or was there like an exponential tipping point?
Yeah, I wanted to know when you went from like Carse to like Whole Foods or the Braves Stadium. That's when I was like, oh, these guys are really doing it now. When I saw you guys at the Braves Stadium,
and you're in Pond City Market too.
Yeah.
It's funny the perception of different things. I mean, quick answer is we've grown just pretty steady between 5 and 25% each year, so never like a hockey stick growth year. And we're just stacking things on that are, like Braves is a nice one. But then let's say you add Braves and you lose, I don't know, some music festival shuts down or you don't get in. It's just, the value of our business, a lot of it is that we're so diverse that like our biggest customers, you probably named 2 of them. I guess it's Truist Park now and Whole Foods, but they're still like in the low single digit as far as like revenue piece of our business. So it would hurt, but it's really nice to have a business where you're not counting on a single customer. But yeah, for us, it's always just been about slow growth. But yeah, go ahead.
That's got to be great for branding too, like getting at Truist Stadium or whatever, because I mean, all those eyes on you, people are going to know who you are. And then that starts, they tell their friends.
Then they see it at Piedmont Park and they see it at the festival.
And they see pictures. Like I saw a ton of Braves pictures with kids eating King of Pops this year. And I was like, wow. That's
I think
cool
that's such an interesting conversation piece. We talk about it so much of like the marketing value of a spot. And I completely agree with you. And I think being it with the Braves and on all these eyeballs without a doubt helps us. But like you mentioned Piedmont Park, like the people at Piedmont Park say the same thing. Like every cart that we put somewhere, oh, this is on the Beltline. That's great exposure. So being in Whole Foods, ooh, that's great exposure. So it's almost, it's funny to think about or interesting to think about at what point is something great exposure and at what point are you making money.
Right.
And or can't and shouldn't those things just be the same? And that's the hard part in like a sales conversation to say is like, yes, and we need to make money on this, because if they all become marketing opportunities, you're running a marketing business.
Yeah, what does it funnel to?
Yeah.
Well, so are you specifically targeting high foot traffic areas, or does the catering portion do you make the most money off of carts and high foot traffic areas?
Probably catering, and then the good festivals. So for every good festival you go to, let's say you go to 3 festivals, one of them is just going to be a complete rain out bust, and you paid $5,000 or whatever to be there. So like, it's just, it's a lot harder to plan for, and a catering is a sure thing. I mean, they paid for it. Typically, if it rains or not, they're still going to have it. So that's good. I mean, and then the wholesale is even more steady. Like, you can actually forecast that. Like, Whole Foods sales, we can forecast within like a couple percentage points of what they're going to do each week, each month. So that's nice because you can really plan for it, and they always pay their checks.
Well, that brings up another good question for festivals in particular. How on earth do you plan what inventory to bring and how much of it?
Yeah, we're blessed in that we have a packaged product. So if we bring too much, if we are planning ahead properly, it's not a problem. So just always try to bring too much, but we certainly have sold out. It's funny, selling out when you start is like an exciting thing. And then as you get into it, that means you left money on the table. Yeah. So you don't want to sell out.
Under your umbrella company, you said you had a bunch of different cohesively acting kind of companies.
Sure.
Would you say that they fall like on a spectrum from impressions or influence, or whatever the word you just used for it was, where you're out like getting people to know about it, as opposed to conversions into dollars, that each one sits at, you mentioned a production company, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably more for exposure. That was your word. That's probably more for exposure than conversions. But I would guess that the King of Crops is more for conversions and for holding on to money and selling and, being more fiscally thoughtful.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? You see what I'm saying?
Well, are they all vertically integrated to King of Pops, or are they separate deals?
They're all separate entities that, we're basically putting money in one pocket to another. So we're selling things to ourselves.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't necessarily recommend, but it's hard to unwind once you start that way.
Well, like for your production company, what kind of, what do you do with that production company? What kind of content are you pushing out with that?
Oh, I'm talking about production of our actual desserts.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
That would be cool though. Maybe next year.
Yeah, that would be cool. Do you guys make content?
We have a marketing department that does, but so we have no, we don't. We're not doing high end production. Like I've never seen. I've seen it. We don't have anything like this setup.
Well, the thing you don't run Instagram ads, do you?
No.
And why would you? Because they're in high foot traffic areas. If you see it, you want it, you buy it.
Yeah. The case could certainly be made for catering. If you want to, maybe an Instagram ads isn't the right one, but certainly like LinkedIn ads could make sense if we want to talk to like HR managers that are regularly hosting events or something.
Well, that's why
I
was asking about, exposure as opposed to conversions, because King of Pops, and nobody could really disagree with this if you live in Atlanta, it's a subculture. It is definitely an Atlanta subculture. If you see King of Pops, there's usually a vibe associated with it.
That's what we're trying.
Yeah, exactly. And so it would make sense to reflect that digitally, whether it be through IGTV or YouTube or different kinds of content. But I just think that that's interesting that you guys have created, just without the digital side, just such a strong physical subculture.
Yeah.
In Atlanta. You're born and raised in Atlanta, or are you from Atlanta?
We talked about this earlier. I grew up. I'm born in Minnesota and whatever, but I've been here since elementary school.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so and you went to college in Georgia? You went to UGA? Mm-hmm. Okay, and so how did you get into the Atlanta circuit? Like, how did you start getting intertwined with all the subcultures in Atlanta?
I think it's kind of like what I was saying with bringing my laptop to the corner when I had emails to do. I was also bringing the cart to concerts when I was going on a date. It was just like the business.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's savage.
The business was just kind of following me and my brother around wherever we were. So if we were going to an art show, we'd ask, "Hey, can we sell pops there?" And it's a lot different now because now we're a established company and people respond to it differently. But when it's your friends doing things, I mean, they're not like, "Well, yeah, I'll do it for 10% of sales." They're just like, "Oh yeah, come out."
Yeah.
And so starting out, that's definitely how it was everywhere we went. I mean, it's been in some ways a struggle. Like I oftentimes had a beer on my cart, and for me that was okay, and then that's not okay once you've got a bunch of employees and they're driving company trucks. You have to understand that things change, and those are culture things that are really hard to develop. But yeah, I mean, I think where it starts from, I can't honestly tell you. If I knew, I would love to share that. But I think everything, without tooting my own horn, I think everything starts from just like the energy and the way that you're approaching it. And the way that we were approaching it, me and my brother, from the very beginning was, let's let this be us. Let's not try to hide anything, and let's be open for help. So we always were open. And I talked about sitting on that same street corner. I didn't know who these people were when I was first sitting there, and then one of them ended up being like a banker, and he was helping us when we needed to get our banking stuff set up. And then someone else ended up being the buyer at Whole Foods down the street. And I didn't introduce myself and say like, "I'm Steven," and they're like, "Hey, I'm the buyer at Whole Foods."
Yeah.
We just were talking.
Fake.
We were just hanging out, and then a month or two later or whatever, when you meet them, they're like, "Oh yeah, I know you actually."
Yeah.
So that's the advantage of starting small and slow. You can't do that when you're trying to put a $500,000 ad budget towards something and make sure that the bet or whatever your idea is going to work. I mean, we were so small, so nimble, and so kind of just open for anything and we didn't take any bets that we couldn't really afford to lose.
Yeah.
So why popsicles? What made you be like, I want to start a popsicle company? I just want to know, like, what you
Isn't
go
that
from
what
like
everyone grows up doing?
AIG to be like, well, I think I'll start a popsicle company.
Yeah, that's what I was
And then
saying.
the name is incredible, King
Yeah.
of Pops.
Yeah,
So,
so-
how'd that happen?
I was saying, I mean, I was kind of rambling in the beginning, but my oldest brother was in Panama and Ecuador and different parts of Latin America. We would just visit him every trip. Like if I was going on a vacation, I'd basically just go stay on his couch because he'd be somewhere cool and it was free. And he was just, for some reason, we started going to these paleta shops and push carts like this. And I don't know, you're just sitting around and you start daydreaming about something. I don't know. It seemed like an idea that would make sense because of the way people are looking at food and what they're putting in their bodies. And yeah.
Yeah,
Can't
there's
really
this,
exactly
there's
tell
this
you
one
why.
guy that's always at the beach where we go to the beach, and
Uh-huh.
he's always walking up and down with his push cart, and
Yeah.
he's there every year, and I'm just like, this dude is dedicated.
Yeah.
And then I go up and talk to him. I'm like, man, if you don't mind me asking how much you make a year, and he told me, I was like, wait, what? I need to go start a push cart and start pushing up and
Sell
down the beach.
popsicles.
Yeah,
Like
I
that's
know.
crazy.
The
Yeah.
Wolf of
You
Wall
know,
Street was
I-
making $100,000 a summer pushing frozen desserts
Yeah.
on the
Oh,
on the
wow.
beach.
He was making over $100,000 in the summer,
awesome.
and then taking off the rest of the year. And I'm like, man, you're getting a tan, you're making money, you're
Yeah.
making kids happy,
Yeah, I think
you're
that
getting exercise.
I think I think I mean, Nick and I did just as well in those first few years for ourselves as we do now. And we never put it to this spot where we need to be taking home like, oh, I'm a CEO, I need to make X, you know?
Yeah, so that's crazy too. I talk about that all the time too. Like when it's you and your brother, y'all are making X amount, and then it's like now you're still making about that, but you've grown this
Yeah.
huge brand. It's like, but what's better? Sometimes is it better not to scale and just keep it like a little boutique, or
It's a funny
because then you
question,
get
yeah.
in all these situations where it's
Yeah.
tons of stress and
Yeah, there's an awesome book called Small Giants that I mean, I think we're still a small business in most ways that you'd look at it, but it's about companies that choose to be great rather than big. And I think it is very common to kind of lose what you're after as you just kind of scale. So I don't know. We have a vision to stay within the South, and that's kind of our nice limitation, but at the same time, like we can't help but be excited about growth, and it's fun. So if it wasn't fun, we wouldn't be doing it. But
Yeah.
So we like to talk about the 4 categories of this podcast are mindset, business, fitness, and relationships. And I think we've covered the business pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd love to learn more, but I want to focus on some other things too. So with your mindset, being an entrepreneur, you need an extreme amount of mental durability. You've mentioned 2 books since you sat down.
I was going to highlight that too.
Yeah. When I first met you, we were talking about a Richard Branson book.
Yep.
So are you a big reader?
yeah, for sure.
Or you said you're a big listener too,
Big
right?
listener, yeah.
Okay, so what are some of the top books that you got that you were really able to collect some gems that built the foundation of who you are as an entrepreneur?
Should have been more prepared, huh? I know this is like a classic podcast question.
Last 3 that you just read will work too.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm reading Creativity Inc. right now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Which I really like.
About Pixar, right?
Yep.
Bob
Ed
Iger.
I don't think Bob
Ed
Iger
Catmull.
wrote it. Yeah.
Ed Catmull.
Bob Iger is who he's dealing with a lot. So he's the Disney.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh gosh, guys, I'm sorry.
What about like some like do you read personal development or just like business books or
I
fiction?
typically probably read. I read too many books, so like I don't want to recommend what I'm reading right now because I don't really think it's that good. So now I don't want to say it out loud either because I said that.
I've read Creativity Inc. It's a good book.
It's a good book. Yeah. I like it a lot. So if you think about one of the things I am reading right now is the Tim Ferriss cookbook, which I find really fascinating. If people haven't looked at that, The 4-Hour Chef. Even if you are not interested in cooking, it's, I think, one of his, I listened to his podcast, but I think it's one of the more interesting things to read. And it's just about how we absorb information, how we learn things. And then cooking, I believe, is super important. And if it's a hobby that you're just even loosely considering, it makes it extremely approachable and fun. That'll take me all year to read. It's like 1,100 pages or something.
Oh wow.
Do you have a daily regiment or anything? Like, do you meditate or do you start your day off in any way?
I start my day off. I insisted to not have a coffee maker, so I make Nancy, my wife, coffee on my Chemex every morning.
Nice.
We kind of just sit, and that's our morning routine. She goes to work. I'm about a block away from the office, so that's nice to just be able to walk
That's
down
the
there.
best.
Where's
Yeah.
y'all's office?
It's pretty close to him. It's Old Fourth Ward, right next to kind of like the Krog Tunnel in Decatur.
Yeah.
But I spend the first half of the day inside the office, I try to use the first half of the day for internal meetings or anything internal, and then the second half of the day external. So that's my little bit of process. And then if I'm not exercising, I try to exercise 5 or 6 times a week. But for me, it's just like the littlest amount, like just doing it at all. Like, so.
Yeah.
I'll be fine if I get in there like 15, 20 minutes. That's a good book, actually, that I would recommend, Atomic Habits. If you guys have read that one. I really got a lot out of that.
Is that James Clear?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the idea of if you go to the gym, just like don't stoke yourself up to the point where you're like, I've got to do an hour and a half workout and this many sets of this. Just literally show up and do something, and you'll find that you usually do more than you're kind of thinking. And I think that's super important. And what was the fourth part?
Mindset, business, fitness, and relationships.
Relationships, yeah.
So
That's
how
a
did
tough
you?
one.
Because you just got married. You
Yeah.
said like a month ago, right?
Yeah.
So how long ago did you start dating?
5 years.
5 years. So
Yeah.
how was that journey of, you started that probably 4 or 5 years before you met her,
Yeah.
and then you're probably in the prime of trying to build this thing. How did you balance your time with, being able to be, the man she wanted you to be, as far as giving her the time and also building your company?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the person that you meet a lot. I don't think anyone is like perfectly ever 100% suited for anyone else where you're never going to argue or anything. But I think there's 2 things that I have really, really love is just feeling like you're 100% on the same side on things. So like you're on the same team and it's not like adversarial. So she's got stuff going on in her job. We love to just break it down in extreme detail as to what's going on and what kind of the options are. And I like really, really respect her opinion on what she's got to say about what we're doing as well. She doesn't have a business background, but it's still super helpful to see. And if it's someone's opinion, then you respect. Those conversations are just always going to be interesting and kind of hit you. I mean, like if someone that thinks you handled something wrong and you care a lot about them, and then you have to kind of like do your deep breaths and understand, like I said, they're coming from a good place, and you know where they're coming from. That's all that really matters.
So a lot of our listeners are going to be young hustlers. The question that comes up all the time is whether to build your empire and find somebody afterward, or find somebody to build with. And and it kind of sounds like you've built an empire, but you also started dating 5 years ago when you were in the middle of building. Yeah. So what did it look like to build while in a relationship with somebody? And obviously she had to be understanding of, you might carry a cart somewhere. Yeah.
You might go on a date pushing the cart.
I think for me specifically, and this is going to sound bad, but it's the truth, is like she didn't know what King of Pops was and kind of didn't give a shit about it when we met. And I think that for me was a good thing, because there was plenty of times when you were like, does this person that I'm going out with, like, are they just excited about this business or whatever? And I knew that from the second we met, that I mean, she just moved to town, didn't really care about it, and we hit it off. So that was obvious for me. But I think if you can have somebody that's in it with you, it's always going to be a positive. The downside of being an entrepreneur oftentimes is that you can't set the stuff aside, and there's a certain amount of like self-work that people need to do for themselves to be able to be a good partner. I don't think realistically that is fair to say, like, you have to understand that being with me means that all the time ever, all of our conversations are going to be about this. But they also realistically need to understand that's something that you're working on and you'll be working through too. So I don't know. I don't think there's a better. I think for me personally, like, this is just my personal experience. Like, when I stopped looking for somebody is when I found somebody. Like, I was trying to be out, trying to build the business and also go out and meet people and stuff. And the second I just kind of said, like, this is kind of going to be all right.
Mission.
Focusing, and just then.
That's how it works out, though, right?
Yeah.
Right when you stop looking.
Which is probably the most frustrating thing ever to hear. Like, but I feel really, really lucky.
It's just like when you're in a relationship, everybody wants you. Like, oh, everyone wants me right now, and then you break up with your girlfriend, and you're like, wait, what happened to all the girls that want me? You know, it just happens like this. Something shift in the universe. You know what I mean? It's always so weird how that happens.
It's probably more perspective. It's probably actually like what you're perceiving. There's probably the same amount of people that like you before or after, but your mindset's different.
Or you just come off more desperate because you're like, you want to hang out tonight? What are you doing? Yeah. You know what I mean?
What's your vision and mission for the company?
Vision is, the purpose is to create unexpected moments of happiness. So we've got a goal of creating 1 million in the next 10 years. And that's mainly going to be, so we do that through giving away pops to like people that otherwise might not have them. Or just surprising them. One of my favorite stories when we were starting was kind of the ethos of this a little bit is I worked on this street corner, like I said, for 3 years, and there's a lot of car accidents there. And whenever people would get in an accident, it became a tradition that I really enjoyed because it was usually pretty boring. I was usually just sitting there by myself. I'd walk up and give them each a pop. I know this sucks, man, but here you go. So I think little things like that, like these tiny moments that can make your day a little bit better, is our company purpose. And we do that oftentimes through pops. And then I think more than that, I want to push people to actually do that out in the community. Vision, stay within the South. This is specifically for King of Pops. Stay within the South. We want to be a $30 million company and by 2030.
Let's go.
I know we have about a 5-page vision that we refer to kind of every quarter.
How do you quantify 1 million? Like, how can you be like, at this point we have put happy moments in a million people's lives.
Yeah, that is exactly the tricky part. So we had a website
Just
counter.
keeping a list in your head.
No, so we're literally saying for that we're giving those away as pops. But yeah, it's a little bit. I think this is probably something that a lot of people struggle with, but you try to pick like these perfect metrics that don't really exist, and then if you use the fact that you can't track something perfectly as a reason to not do it, then that's kind of a bummer. Like you shouldn't let that get in the way. But it is frustrating and sometimes hard to like get people pumped up because what gets measured gets improved.
So speaking of giving it away, what are you guys doing for your big 10-year anniversary? Because that's a big one. It's 10 years. What are you guys going to do? You got any big plans?
We got some big plans, yeah. So April 1st is our birthday. It's also April Fool's Day, so that led to some good early surprises. But yeah, we've got a lot of stuff planned. You just have to keep an eye out for it.
Okay. Free popsicles. Just kidding. No, but really.
One to everyone in Atlanta. You'll get close to 1 million.
Yeah.
Well, so I can tell you got there's emotion involved with this business. You love this business. It's your baby. What do you think about the idea that businesses are started to be sold? Do you have an exit plan? Have you even thought about an exit plan?
No, we don't have an exit plan. The way that I don't think that we will sell the business. I think it's worth exponentially more to me and my brother than it would be to anyone would be willing to pay for it. I certainly don't have any problem with the concept. But for me, I don't have, and it's why we don't take a lot of money out of the business. I literally enjoy it. Like, I don't think that there's anything I'd be doing with money differently. And if I couldn't do this, that would actually be a bummer.
Could you be the Steve Jobs of popsicles?
I don't know what that means, but maybe
stick with it forever and innovate nonstop.
Yeah. I think that's what we want to do. I mean, I don't know that I'm never going to start another business that isn't related at all to this vertical integration, and I've said this so many times now that if we ever did sell our business, it would be a lot of funny recordings to listen to, but I don't think we'll sell it. It's just like unless we have to. I mean, hopefully I don't have to ever sell it, but it's fun. Like I literally have my dream job. I get to do it every day. I work with a bunch of people that I love. We make people happy more often than not. I mean, like you said, like it's pretty random to be selling popsicles, and it certainly was never anything that I would have imagined. And Nick and I talk about it a lot. Like, if it hadn't been popsicles, would it have been a similar business? I don't know. But this is where we ended up with. This is what we've got, and it's just there's endless things we can do. So we're opening a bunch of like poptail bars over the next few years, which is like the next iteration for us of the car.
You call them cocktail or poptail?
Poptail.
Poptail. Yeah.
Well, we'll incorporate alcohol into it, and we'll also have soft serve ice cream and just
Are there alcohol pops? Is that a thing?
Yeah, it's not a thing.
It's not a thing.
It is a thing. It's not a thing we do.
What about CBD
We used
pops?
to do it. We used to do that.
What about the CBD pops? You got into that yet? Big CBD rush going on right now?
Yeah, there's a big rush. P10 represents a few. Our distribution company, we distribute about 5 or 6 CBD products, but I'm not going to make. Don't have a positive or negative feeling towards CBD, but I don't personally use it, and so I don't want to do something just to capitalize on a trend too much. If it was something that I felt like great about, or I'm not saying we won't do it, but I have heard more and more people that it's making a big difference for. So I don't know. Not holding out.
What do you think your purpose is? If you got your company purpose, what's yours?
Personal purpose.
Personal purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fairly similar, but I mean, right now a lot of the weight that I feel is like not messing this thing up, which can be scary. But as far as a personal purpose, I think it's just as simple as trying to make the world a little bit better place, which is kind of a cop out, but I think it's true.
Yeah, I mean, you're living it. That's what your company purpose is too. So I don't think it's a cop out.
So a lot of entrepreneurs may have high risk tolerance. Would you say you have low, medium, or high risk tolerance?
I'd say high risk tolerance. Yeah, we don't have any debt per se, but we've got a lot of. I've got a lot of like different mortgages and different things that if things don't go well, yeah, but I'd say pretty high.
So for the person who's working in an insurance company right now or in a 9-to-5 job
Yeah.
and wants to make a transition into an entrepreneurial life, what are the first 3 tips that you would tell them before they quit their job? What would you tell them to have figured out before you take that transition?
I think you have to, so whatever your idea is, so just use ours for example. I think if I was like someone really culinary minded and only liked to make pops, I think we would have failed. You have to like every part of the business, especially in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You have to like the sales, you have to like the development, you have to like the HR and training, you have to like each piece of it. So if there's just like, let's say you're an amazing coder and you don't want to do anything else, you probably won't be fulfilled with the business.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you have to be good at all of it, but understanding that you're going to have to do that for a lot, just as much as anything else.
So get ready to be versatile in the capacity of business.
Yeah.
Play all positions or know all positions.
Yeah, if it's a passion of yours, don't think that the passion is going to be what you're going to be spending all your time doing. You'll be spending just building a business is very varied. Another tip that I have is if you're going to start, so I guess this isn't exactly what you were asking, but if you're going to start doing something, don't let it drag out. So pick a specific date to start. That way there's a lot of tweaking that can happen. But the reality is until you let something out into the world, you don't really know how it's going to be responded to. There's just
set definite goals or deadlines.
Just a definite, for me, as simple as a deadline of at this day, I'm going to launch said brand, company, idea, whatever it is, and then stick to that deadline. I don't think that there's any advantage to, I mean, you need to give yourself enough time, but people will just sit on ideas because it hurts to have something come out and not go as you expected, but maybe just expect that to happen. We were originally planning on having a brick and mortar shop on that corner. Mm-hmm. The grease trap, I had $7,000 was my startup money. The grease trap quote came back at $30,000, so I went and got a shared kitchen instead and asked those guys if I could set up a push cart at that very spot where I sat for 3 years, like I said. If we had gotten that store set up, I don't think our business would be a fraction of the size it is. I'd be sitting there probably right now not talking on a podcast about anything. So,
and what would your final tip be?
Final tip, I mean, I think he asked about risk tolerance. I think you kind of have to have a decent amount of it, and if you're not going to be comfortable with the idea that you might lose everything, I mean, you don't have to be kind of like crazy. Like, I don't like the gambling analogies because I think you can be a little bit smarter than that. But it's kind of how we started, right? I mean, There's not a sure thing in insurance. So if there's not a sure thing in insurance, there sure isn't a sure thing in being an entrepreneur.
That's true.
Nothing you have is really for sure. Enjoy what you're doing and try your best.
Yeah.
Well, and I got one last question, kind of piggybacking off something you just said with risk tolerance. If you lost it all, could you do it again?
I couldn't do it again the same way. I wish I could, but I know I couldn't. I don't have enough energy. Like, I literally couldn't. So we called it summer weight. We used to, because we wouldn't really eat meals. We would just be working literally. Yeah. So, I mean, like, physically, I think I couldn't knowing it. I think it was a disadvantage knowing how hard I had to work. Like, looking back, I think I could start a business again, and I would start a business again, but I couldn't start one that required just absolute physical work and time of being there. Like, where I had to be. I mean, if I had nothing, I guess my tone might change. It would be really hard. It would be really hard for me. It was. it was exhausting. Like
But you could start a
like 30.
business.
Yeah, I could start a business for sure. I don't think I could start the same business though.
Well, man, we're super thankful you were able to come and spread some of this knowledge on the show. You're really kind of a hometown hero. Everyone in Atlanta knows who you
Appreciate
are.
that,
for sure.
We're behind you to help you push your journey to
Thanks, man.
making
Yeah.
1 million people happy. Like that's what we're here. We're here to impact people and make people happy, give them the motivation and the information to take control of their own lives and live by design. That's kind of our tagline for right now. And so anything we can do to help, you got
Thank you
Hustle
very
Up
much.
behind you. We're very thankful that you're in Atlanta. Stay loyal to Atlanta. We're big on that. Where can people find you?
KingofPops.com, King of Pops on Instagram. Come on down to our headquarters. It's 552 Decatur Street. We'd love to see you. And then Pont City Market, we've got, if you want to get a poptail, we're open there all winter. And then Wonder Kid is a new diner where our soft serve is at. That's on Memorial Drive, 777 Memorial.
Awesome.
That's the new hot spot. You got to get
Let's
down
go.
there.
We'll have to come. We'll have to do like
Yeah,
a
we'll
vlog
show
or
up.
something over there.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, Steven, thank you so much for coming on. Anyone listening, go check out King of Pops. Tune in. We really covered the whole gambit, mindset, business, fitness, relationships. Steven, thank you again so much
Thanks,
for
guys.
coming. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Clint.
I'm Matt.
At HSTL UP. You know where to find us. And
Hit
until
that
next
like and subscribe
Oh,
button.
yeah. Thank you. Like,
Ring the
subscribe, bell. Do it all. Follow. And until next time, hustle up.
Salute.